think of the White Australia policy?
Well, I think it's good, and they should really have it and keep out the coloured races.
We should keep our country, let's say, as white as possible, but we have our own natives that we should look after.
And for the indignity and degradation thus inflicted on a proud people and a proud culture, we say sorry.
We committed the murders. We took the children from their mothers.
A lot of Australians talk about, oh yes, we want to give the Aborigine a fair go, then it's full stop and it's usually forgotten. They never go on to say vote in favour of any legislation which allows for the elevation of the Aboriginal people. They don't do these things. They talk about it, but they never do it.
We deserve to be recognised. We deserve to be heard.
And we deserve to be celebrated. As people.
As role models.
As warriors.
My name's Daryl. I was born and bred in Western Sydney in a place called Richmond on the foothills of the Blue Mountains, and I come from the Darug tribe. Back then we were just kids growing up in a little rural country town, and you know, Dad always worked and Mum stayed at home, and we lived in a housing commission house, and we never had anything. We never had no spare money. We never had a car. When Dad did have a car, it normally had a flat battery, so we had to push it to start it anywhere. I remember one night I was a kid and Mum and Dad were having an argument over money, because we never had much money. The Smith family used to come around and give us presents at Christmas, and we'd get clothes and shoes and Christmas hampers from them, you know, that's what I remember. But I remember one story that distinctly sticks out was Mum and Dad having an argument. And I was probably 6 or 7 or 8 years old or something, I don't know, and about money. And I remember Dad saying, you know, I can't get any more money. They won't let me be a boss. I'm not allowed to. And you look back at it now and you really do see the difference of where we grew up and what we did because of our heritage and because of our status in the community.
My name's Kathy. I'm a descendant of the Perkins Bray clan. I'm a proud Eastern Arrernte woman. I do not claim my European side. They never contributed towards my upbringing. I was born in Alice Springs. I grew up in the Gap Cottages, which is where the partly coloured Aboriginal people were accommodated. Up until the referendum in '67, that's where I grew up. All the houses down there were 2-bedroom, and according to the half-caste record, in our house there were 17 who lived there. Myself and my siblings, we slept in the house with our grandmother, Mary Bray, nee Perkins, while everyone else slept out in the yard, and then just packed up and went to work each day. Overcrowding was an issue way back then, but it never ever hit the headlines that people were living in overcrowded accommodation. There was no way Mum could accommodate just her children and herself in a 2-bedroom dwelling. So we grew up in really happy times. We were really close. We either played in the creek or went to kindy when we were old enough. But due to the permit system, we never came into Alice Springs at all until 67, when the referendum and we were given the right.
Grew up on Mbarntara country, which is Alice Springs.
Our mum was a single mum, so we had a white father and he left us when we were quite young. We left Alice Springs after primary school. I had just reached high school at that stage, and then we lived in different locations around Australia, in lots of little towns and major cities. We did a lot of travelling. The first place that we actually went to was Hobart, and I recall the school there, going to school there, and a lot of the kids there were quite racist. I didn't realise at first, but then we heard all of these stories around school.
Yeah, I think they were difficult times for all of us, particularly moving from Alice Springs, where you still had some things that you're going, but majority of the population and the school were Aboriginal kids. So, moving from that to where you're the minority and yes, maybe you were the only Aboriginal person.
We were always labelled as half-caste, the half-caste kids. Certain things in school, especially primary school, we were labelled as that, and I suppose to a certain degree ostracised. We never had no money, Mum never had no money, we never had no money. So we're always cast or painted as the poor ferals that live in a housing commission over the back of Richmond. To us it was water off a duck's back. We didn't care. Long as we got our dinner at night time, and whatever Mum made us, and we went out and played all day, we didn't care. It was the best life in the world.
I'm John Wayne Parsons. I'm a proud Yagurrabal and Miriam Lair man from Queensland. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a community man here living in Melbourne. There's a group of islands called the Torres Straits, also known as Zenith-Kes. We're seafaring people, that's what makes us different. But even to our Aboriginal brothers and sisters and my mob down on the mainland, they're very distinct in their own rights. Right across this nation of Australia, we have our own belief systems, linguists, our languages, our songs, our ceremonies and belief systems, and also our cultural, historical heritages as well.
My name is Currie Arabina. I'm a very proud Celtic Torres Strait Islander. I have ancestral connections through to Murray Island, often referred to as Mur. What was also really important about the contribution of Torres Strait Islanders, not only to Australia but to the world, has been through the establishment of the legal case, which disrupted the view of terra nullius, which is that this land was not inhabited by people when it was first colonised. Murray Island was the place where they were able to demonstrate a continuing cultural connection to place. And as a result of that, we've established international land rights and land use legislation in this and other countries. So it has been a landmark case with ripple effects that have gone on beyond what our Australian context provides.
My name's Eddie Cabillo. I'm a Larrakia, Wajigan and Central Arundel man from the Northern Territory. I basically grew up in Darwin. My father's from Alice Springs, and that's where I get my Central Arundel connection from. Australia was colonialised, and the way we were colonialised is that there was nobody here. The legal system that's in place on this country is one without any regard for our people, and that system has been set up to look after the interests of the colonialists. Current legal system of this country is doing what it was set up to do, right? And that is to persecute us, and it hasn't deviated from that since the inception of the law in this country. And you know, that in itself causes you know, a huge detrimental effect. When I completed my studies, I did my articles, which is a year on the job, and to then become admitted as a practitioner. I did that with the Northern Territory Legal Aid Commission. I remember on my first day as a admitted practitioner, I was in Court 1 in Darwin, and it was fairly packed. As you can understand, you know, 85% of the prison population is Indigenous. People are 33% of the whole of the Northern Territory. So the court is predominantly packed with Indigenous peoples. And the court orderly walked over to me and informed me that I should be sitting behind my lawyer in the next row. And despite me having all my files and other things that I needed for my first day on the job, she still thought that I was a person who was coming before the court. And then I said, oh, look, it's my first day and you sort of ruined that, and I'm already nervous, but you've made it worse. And then she went to sit back down, and then the other orderly came over and basically told me the same thing, right? Perception is a huge thing in our society, and particularly in the justice space. If you're a person of colour, whether you're Indigenous or not, it's perceived you're usually in trouble with the law.
One thing I did learn as a kid is I learnt to fight very well, because if I didn't, I was going to get punched all the time. So, and that's went on throughout my life. I got myself into a lot of trouble because of that. But that was one of the outcomes of me standing up for myself. And you know, I learned a lot of things, and one of them was how to dodge a punch. The other one was how to talk back to them without fighting. So that's one thing I learnt too, because sometimes that's better than doing that than fighting. But I got into a little bit of trouble with the police over the years. It was mainly due to alcohol, I must say. And you know, when we were all young and heroic and silly at the same time. But I can't say categorically that I was targeted by them. I certainly, because of my status in the community, it didn't help me. It didn't make them my friends, like it did with some people, but we're all very cautious. We grew up to be very cautious.
Indigenous people are the most incarcerated people in the world, also renowned for not following international treaties. We are the only colonial nation in the world that hasn't had a treaty with its First Nations people. Our people die earlier than non-Indigenous people in this country. You know, a young man of 18 years of age is more likely to be incarcerated than he is to go to university. We've had, you know, numerous inquiries and royal commissions that have given recommendations around the issues facing our people, and we constantly are ignored. And the reality is, without engaging with Indigenous peoples and interacting with our laws and our systems, Indigenous people who are still practicing their laws and customs and cultures to this day are going to come up against a legal system that is systemically racist.
Mum and Nana never spoke Aranda until the 67 referendum. They'd whisper it. You'd hear words of Aranda words every now and then, but then you'd hear them whispering or talking in real low tones to each other. And then once the referendum and we moved into town, they spoke openly, but they were still really hesitant. Nana was still scared. Years later, I asked Mum why she didn't teach us Aranda, and she said, well, welfare or native protection said that if your children speak that monkey language, they'll take us away. And she said, I should have taught yous because they took yous away anyway.
So there's some words I can speak, like ware, kala richananga, kala, kara, our skin names. So there's some I do, but and when I go back and see family, they speak fluently. Unfortunately, if you want to learn the language, because it's quite hard, you have to live and breathe it, and that would mean also sitting with family and being there. But I think because Mum instilled and pushed us through education, it was kind of a win and a loss, because we couldn't necessarily sit down with family who still do have it and speak it fluently. And because we travelled quite a bit, that was the other thing as well. Leaving country, we were away for quite a bit, so we were, for most of our childhood we were away, and that's where you pick up language more.
The distinction for our communities is that we have 8 very strong specific languages, and in terms of the distinction that we have, we've still got very strong connections and a strong language across all of those 8 distinct language groups, and we were able to lift our work and effort and songs and knowledges and take them into different landscapes. And so what we're seeing now is this incredible revitalisation of languages. I have taken my children and taught them dance and song in particular. I have told my children that their children are to refer to me as Aka, which is an important grandmother term. And in turn, I am able to tune their ear to Torres Strait Islander language by singing songs at the times before they go to sleep. So imprinting language into the ears of my grandchildren has been a very important strategy, not only for survival, but to tell them that they belong somewhere other than an Australian society. They have got within their veins and through their voice and their mannerisms and how polite they are and how they behave towards elders in particular.
I think song and voice and storytelling is so important to me. It's part of my arts practice. Song, even though it might sound lovely with harmonies and the instruments and all that, but it carries so much story. It carries stories of our ancestors. It remembers and pays respects to them. It also carries law in certain songs, so it helps guide you, how you practice, how you respect each other, with nature and our cosmology. It's so important. And to keep singing those songs and those stories, it connects you back to home, especially when I live so far away from home. That's so important to me, and I seem to gravitate towards other Torres Strait Islanders that are also living off country. And when we sing those songs, especially when they're around language and around those stories and home and ceremony, it really connects us. It's a really, really important song. It's like our oral traditions, it's like our literature.
Art, culture, music, song, dance are some of the life ways in which Torres Strait Islanders express themselves, express events, and also express opportunities. And we have seen that from early drum recordings that were kept in the Australian Institute for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies, where there were opportunities to see our ancestors dance and perform certain publicly able to be viewed songs and performances that were really talking about Islander ways of life. It was also really important from a philosophical point of view, where people could understand some of the, for want of a better word, the dreaming stories of our places and connections.
Being Aboriginal as a child was difficult, I found, because I was so white and pale, and I felt like I didn't belong with Aboriginal families, and I didn't really belong with white families, because a lot of the families didn't accept me because I was so white, and then the white people didn't accept me because I claimed to be Aboriginal and said I was Aboriginal, but they laughed at the fact and didn't understand that an Aboriginal person could look the way that I looked.
Sometimes I wasn't accepted because of, similar to Lynn, features, and people assume. But then, having said that, you know, when I mingled with people who were non-Indigenous, I got the same as well, because we were taught and raised to identify as being Aboriginal because of the past historic stuff, and acknowledging our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and the struggle that they went through, and to make sure that we're never ashamed of our identity. We're never shy of that, to run away from our identity, but it was difficult because we were kind of caught in two worlds. And I know that, you know, some, particularly Mum and the stolen generation, and there's 5 generations in our family, they were talking about not fitting in two worlds and having to live in those two worlds, and to a degree we did as well, didn't we?
Yeah. When my granddaughter was born, and to this day, I like to rub myself against her and tell her, I wish I was your colour. And it was just to make her feel more comfortable, because her brother is lighter than her, and so's her mum and dad. So she never ever questioned it, and she felt comfortable in her skin.
We used to come together and practice and feast around those times. After a performance, you would have just an incredible buzz. And some of those things helped me, as a fair-skinned Torres Strait Islander woman, represent myself and my ancestry out there in the world. It is sometimes deeply challenged, this personal identity that I have, and I used to be either or. It was either I am all Torres Strait Islander, or I am a person of my mother's lineage, because my father was Torres Strait Islander. And in our culture, you always take the father's line. And so for me, that was very, very powerful. And the other thing that's been helpful for me in terms of my identity now is to really honour my mother's contribution to who I am and how I be.
To answer the question, yes, I was proud to be Aboriginal when I was growing up. There was a lot of times I couldn't run away from it because it was there. I couldn't run away from it, so I had to stick up for it. So I wasn't going to stick up for something I wasn't proud of. There was times that I was physically and verbally attacked because I was that when I was growing up. And you can't stand there and put your tail between your legs. You've got to cop it on the chin and still be proud and still speak up for what you believe in. Because if you don't, they'll take advantage of it. And, you know, I was hurting enough at the time. I didn't want to hurt anymore. And the only way to not hurt anymore is fight back. And when you fight back with dignity and strength. And that's what we did. I think it's important to remember to not forget where we come from, not forget who we are, not forget the history of it, but we need to look forward. We need to look forward and we need to go forward.
Who are you now?
First and foremost, I'm me, and I'm proud to be me. And I'm proud of my heritage, I'm proud of my upbringing, I'm proud of my children's beliefs, to follow what their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents believed in but were never allowed to say. And we can't forget what happened, but we can change the future so it doesn't happen again. And work together to make ourselves stronger.
I'm very proud to be an Aboriginal woman. It's interesting that as a child, because I lived in the two worlds and was never accepted, I felt like I didn't identify, but as I've gotten older, you just learn that, you know, you can be proud of who you are and where you come from.
And I've never been ashamed to be an Aranda woman from Alice Springs. So, yeah, growing up with our culture, and I suppose, you know, growing on our country and with my grandparents and that. So, yes, very proud to be Aboriginal, and I've instilled that in my children.
I'm still the same person that I was. I'm culturally strong with my people. That underpins who I am. All my experience as an Indigenous person shapes who I am. I'm a Larrakia, Wodjigan and Central Islander man from the Northern Territory.
All I can say is I am a proud Yuggurabal and Miriam Lamb man. I can't separate those two because I honour both my mum and father and those cultural heritages that blood still runs through my vein. No matter how far I live off country, I know who I am.
I am very proudly a descendant of the Miriam people. I find I am able to be centred when I am with my family and in my cultural constructs. I am not scrutinised. I am absolutely understood to be people's aunties, and to be treated in that way brings me great joy.
I was born an Aboriginal, and I'm a proud Aboriginal, Eastern Aranda woman, and I'll die an Aboriginal woman.
I'm a Darug woman. I'm still here despite the genocide of my mob since colonisation. Am I different from what you expected?
I follow in the footsteps of the strong Eastern Aranda women who came before me. Are we black enough for you?
I aspire to uncover and decolonise all of the black, queer and gender non-conforming mob within our communities. How are you empowering the voiceless?
I am proud of my ancestors, I am proud of the knowledges, and I am proud of my community. Are you proud of your ancestors?
I am a strong Palawa woman who is committed to self-determination for our people. Are we too angry for you?
Take some time to unwind. Take my hand, you'll be fine. Take one step, just take a single breath. Take some time to unwind. And I've never been here before, and I've always liked less than more, and I've never done as I'm told.